Hey guys, it's Troy, and every so often I run across a pen that I purchase for various reasons. One being that it's something that you don't often find. And this particular pen here in the United States is not something that's tremendously common, but it's also not tremendously rare either. This particular pen is something that you would find more in the UK or in Australia. But when I saw this here, I thought it was very interesting because the other reason that I would purchase a pen is because I just find it incredibly interesting and fun. And this is one of those. It's no secret, I love vintage pens. I like modern pens too, but I really, really like vintage, and I like the little bit of history behind them. So when I saw this one for sale at antiquedigger.com, I went ahead and just jumped at it because I said, now that's a lot of fun. I don't have anything in this pattern. Look at this lizard skin pattern on it. So that intrigued me. And then you can see here, it is a Mentmore. Mentmore. That's something I've never really been able to touch, pick up, and play with because I just really haven't seen them. But I am familiar with a little bit of the history of Mentmore, and I'm going to read you a little bit of history. I'm not going to read you everything, but I will read you some of the history that I find over at richardspens.com. So let's get right to that. And I'm just going to, like I said, read you some of what he has that is published there. Mentmore Manufacturing Company Limited was a pen manufacturing company located initially in London, England. They've since done a few relocations, but they were founded in 1919 and named after its first address in Mentmore Terrace, Hackney, London. The company's first product was a self-filling fountain pen fitted with a gold-plated brass nib and had a price of, in the United States money, 12 cents at the time. By 1925, Mentmore had a thriving business selling fountain pens and stationers' sundries in ebonite and cassine. At that time, the company introduced replaceable nibs in industry first and set up a subsidiary, the Platignum Pen Company. Yeah, platinum is really how it's pronounced, I understand, but it's more fun to call it Platignum because I stick a G in there, and I'm very familiar with some of the Platignum products, and I'll show you some here in a little bit. But they set up that Platignum Pen Company to produce pens with stainless steel nibs, advertising them with the slogan, "As good as gold." They had wanted to use the name Platinum, sort of like the Japanese manufacturer, but they were prevented from doing so by British laws concerning product description. Platignum was the first company to use injection molding in the production of pens, and at some time before 1936, Mentmore had changed its name to the Spot Pen Company, but continued producing pens under the Mentmore brand. Then they go through some World War II history, but in 1950, the first Platignum ballpoint pens appeared, and in 1957, they began offering fiber tip pens. Production of Mentmore branded pens ceased in the late 50s. In 1981, the Spot Pen Company renamed itself to become the Platignum Pen Company and entered the rollerball market. I'm going to leave it right there as for the history. So, there you go. This pen was probably made in the 1930s because of the method of filler. This is a button filler. And you pull off this blind cap here, and there you have a button. This should be actually very familiar with anybody who is into stuff like this, a Parker Duofold. So this is not an uncommon filling mechanism. Instead of a lever, essentially, you have the blind cap where you have that button, and you depress this button, and it flexes a metal bar that runs from the back of the section all the way to underneath that button. And when that bar is flexed, it presses up against an ink sac. So it would have an ink sac just like you would find let's say in a lever filler pen, or in a squeeze converter kind of pen. So there's some sort of sac that would be in those. So for those in the US should be very familiar with the Parker Duofold. Same kind of filling mechanism here, and this is all plastic here. So I don't know how that dates this particular pen, if it would be, you know, later production of their product or what, but possibly in the 30s, maybe as late as the 50s, though probably not so much. But what intrigued me too is when looking at this lizard skin pattern here, look at how it almost looks like you've got a lizard pattern that runs between here, this line, and this line, and that it's wrapped helically around this particular pen. So that was pretty cool. You've got that silver trim, you've got a very plain serviceable clip to it, you've got the top that is just nothing special there, didn't expect it to be. And of course you've got the Mentmore Diploma. So the Diploma is the model made in England. Very simple silver cap band. Twist open, and there you have one of their nibs. It's an interesting nibs because it says Osmi Iridium. What is cool about Osmi Iridium? And I'll actually read you also from Richard's Pens a description of that. It refers to the metal in the metals trade as native iridium, a naturally occurring alloy of iridium and osmium with traces of other platinum group metals. One of the first metals used extensively for tipping nibs. It's now disused because of osmium's extreme toxicity. Osmi Iridium contains more iridium than osmium. So that's another thing that intrigued me. Hey, potentially toxic pen? I'm in, buddy. So, so you look at it, it's got that that black section here, which is it's not really big, but my big old paws can hold it still fairly comfortably. And then the length of that pen is easy to use. You want to, and you can go ahead and post that pen, but it does back weight it just a little bit. So I've been using it non-posted when I go to write with it. So just intriguing, just really cool looking. That nice lizard pattern wrapped around that particular pen, I think is neat. But how does this toxic nib actually write? Was it worth it? Well, let's go ahead and find out. So an old Mentmore. Well, it's my first Mentmore. Definitely not my first Platignum, but we'll talk about that here momentarily. So if you're interested in a vintage pen like this, well, how would it stack up to something that you may already have? Well, all right, we showed you this, the Parker Duofold, so that gives you an idea. How about a more modern pen? You have to have, and I do believe it's international treaty, that if you're going to do a pen review, you really have to have a Pilot Metropolitan with which to do some comparison, because they are possibly one of the more ubiquitous fountain pens on the face of the planet. Alright, so let's go ahead and throw out a couple more pens here, and these are both Platignum, Platignum. This particular one is the Silver Line. The Silver Line came out obviously much later probably than this, because it actually has in it a squeeze converter. There you go. So there is your Platignum Silver Line. And then a much more modern Platignum Studio number 5. And I do believe I did a review of this pen some time ago by request by one of our viewers. So, placing those down, there you go. Size comparison. You know, they're all fairly close to one another. So, continuing with the English theme of Mentmore pens, I went ahead and decided to use in English made and certainly English named ink. So we used Diamine Earl Grey. I've been using this ink a lot lately. Some of my pen pals had been using it, and I decided I'd give it a shot. And when I had a nice little silver looking lizard skin pen, I said let's go ahead and use some Earl Grey in it. So let's go with a Mentmore 1930s. I'm assuming it's a 1930s because that's, you know, how it was sold to me, as being from the 1930s. But this is the Mentmore Diploma. And you can certainly hear that feedback. It almost sings to you when you're writing with it. And this is that Osmi Iridium nib. I had to put in the diamine, Earl Grey. It definitely has some good flex to it. You know, when I first got it, it wasn't the smoothest nib in the world. It was borderline for me in terms of it being acceptable as to if I was comfortable writing with it. I did go ahead and take just a little bit of micro mesh, spend just a little bit of time with it, but we're talking basically it's going to write with a medium, probably up to a double broad when you go to write. So a medium up to a double broad. Yeah, that's a good wet nib. But so far, you know, when I first went to go fill this pen and I was pressing down on that button, it didn't go down very far. I was thinking, all right, is this thing actually going to get a good full fill? So, you know, I kept pressing the button, and sure enough, I got a really good fill. I've been using this pen an awful lot. I've been carrying it as my pen of the day. Been using it here at my desk. Been using it to write letters to pen pals so far, and it's done okay. You know, it's I wouldn't say it's the top quality of vintage fountain pens. Definitely not at the low end. I've had some real garbage from various companies. This definitely is a whole lot better than some of the third-tier manufacturers that I've run across from like the 40s and 50s here in the U.S. So, if you're into Platignums and if you like the history of the various pens and the evolution of different companies, well, the Mentmore from jolly old England, and it's kind of a neat addition to my collection, and certainly something that I didn't have in terms of the brand, but also just that lizard pattern, just that really cool looking lizard skin. And you know, my boys really enjoyed this too. I said, look at this lizard pen, guys. And they were saying, man, that's cool. So there's an addition to my collection. AntiqueDigger.com, 10% off all your purchases at Antique Digger if you use discount code TROY, T-R-O-Y. And I do use my own discount codes. I wouldn't have purchased this particular pen without using one. So there you go, folks. Hey, thanks for watching. Keep in mind, I've got a couple videos still forthcoming, and I've got some giveaways forthcoming. I've been telling you about that, and been dropping some hints here or there. But it won't be long before we're going to have a really nice modern pen by a custom maker that I want to put in the hands of one of you. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.